My name is Gary Allen. I'm the president of the foundation. I want to welcome you to our June webinar to hear from our fellows. I want to remind all of you that the session will be recorded. It will be available on our website in early July. We'll be pleased to make it available to you guys too, but we're especially pleased today to welcome our fellows. I don't have a long introduction to them because that was previously available from our moderator who should join us later in this webinar. So I'm going to ask each of them to start by, to start by introducing themselves and providing at least some brief words about their own background prior to their description of their fellowship experience so that the participants can get a better understanding of who you are as students and perhaps better understand why we're so excited about having you as a part of the MEL Fellowship Program. Let's start out today with, I think it is Hannah that we're starting out with. So
Yep.
Hannah, go ahead, please.
Okay, just want to make sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm Hannah Weicker. And just as a short introduction, I'm a senior at the University of Maryland, and I'm studying environmental science and policy with a concentration in wildlife ecology and management. I was an intern for Dr. Mullinex's Applied Spatial Wildlife Ecology Lab. You can see me there in that photo with a deer with part of one of the projects there. I'm the president of the UMD chapter of the Wildlife Society, and I'm currently an intern for the USGS Eastern Ecological Science Center. So something I'm very grateful for that this fellowship has allowed me to do was to attend the Wildlife Society conference in Louisville, Kentucky. And I was able to see up and coming wildlife research and posters and talks and presentations throughout my time there. And I was also able to meet and connect with many people from all across the country that are currently working with wildlife. I was also able to connect with lab members from Dr. Mullinex's lab, where I later became an intern. So I was able to go to this conference before I interned there. And this conference was so rewarding, and not only for all of the wildlife talks and getting a better understanding of research and grad school within wildlife ecology, but I also was able to make good connections and really see how these larger scale conferences run because it was my first conference I ever attended. And I'm very grateful for this experience, which I never would have been able to do without this fellowship. And this October, I'll be attending the Wildlife Society National Conference again, but this time I will be presenting a poster there on raccoon abundance with the ACEWell Lab. Another conference I attended was the MAEOE conference in order to promote the Natural Resources Careers Camp as a part of the fellowship. And this was a really fun and rewarding experience, getting to reach out and to the community and showing all of the things that the camp has to offer. I was able to connect with others that have sent their own kids to the camp and kind of see that positive influence of NRCC, and kind of see like where all of this work is going towards. I was also able to connect with other people that help out with the Maryland Forestry Foundation and kind of get better ideas to promote the camp. So overall, these conferences were really a great experience, and I'm really grateful for this through the fellowship. I attended the annual forestry board meeting in November at the Silburn Arboretum, and I've never been to the Arboretum before, so that was just really cool to see in general. But I also met members of the Maryland forestry boards, and I learned like just the different forestry projects around Maryland, like the 5 million trees and the tremendous projects, which was really cool to see firsthand the type of people that are working on those projects. And it was really great to just network with those people. And I also attended the monthly NRCC committee meetings as often as I could, and I helped with promoting NRCC primarily with the social media aspect. So being in these meetings showed me what targets I should focus on and who I should be contacting, and kind of understanding how much work it takes to put on a camp like NRCC. And it was really just helpful to see how a nonprofit runs and really all the behind the scenes work to get there. And so as a part of promoting NRCC, I ran the social media account. So I answered questions and gained more of an online presence for the camp. And so I created some of the posts which are shown here. So I tried to focus on different things like what skills students could get out of going to the camp and different activities they can get. So I really tried to focus on using a lot of different photos from past campers just to sort of show all the activities and really just try to get more of an online presence because I really think that the camp is a great opportunity. It's just, hard to get out there across the entire state of Maryland. So this was really fun experience too, to be able to promote the camp on social media. So this fellowship has helped me to start doing what I want to do. And the stipend that this fellowship generously offered allowed me to take on a summer internship with the USGS Eastern Ecological Science Center, where I'm helping research with their common and least terns, as you can see in the photo. And I've been completing nest surveys and banding the chicks there. So this is a really fun internship, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without the stipend from this fellowship. And once I graduate in December, I plan to apply to get my associate wildlife biologist certification from the Wildlife Society. And then I hope to then work with a government agency or nonprofit with wildlife research and management. And this fellowship has granted me with just so many opportunities that I'll forever be grateful for. So I'm happy to take any questions and I can leave my email as well.
Okay, I am here. And thank you, Hannah, for that presentation. So Gary, I'll just give a short introduction of myself. My name is Maurice Ashby. I am basically the workforce liaison developing role here at Treat Baltimore, stepping in for Megan Carr, who is typically running this webinar. So we will have questions at the end, Hannah. So if you're still around, we'll take those. We'll also be taking some questions in the chat if anybody does have them. Let me get to my next intro. So after Hannah, now we have Lauren Baker. Lauren Baker is a recent graduate of the University of Maryland College Park. She's getting her bachelor, or she has her bachelor's of science in environmental science and policy. And in the fall, she will be attending Vermont Law School to pursue a Juris Doctorate with a concentration in climate law. Lauren plans to work in the nonprofit sector, focusing on climate and environmental justice for disadvantaged communities. So welcome, Lauren, and you can start your presentation.
Hey, hi everyone. So like Marie said, my name is Lauren Baker. I just recently graduated from the University of Maryland in College Park with my Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science and Policy with a concentration in Environmental Politics and Policy. And in the fall, I will be moving up to Vermont to go to Vermont Law School and get my JD, which I'm super excited to start my next chapter. And so a little fun fact about me is that I kind of like to dip my toes into everything. And so some of my professional experience has been in environmental education and sustainability programming. So for 2 summers during undergrad, I worked with Parks and People Foundation, which is a local nonprofit in Baltimore City that hosts a summer camp similar to NRCC that serves Baltimore City public school students that are in elementary school. And so I got the opportunity to collaborate with 5 other undergrad students to create an environmental curriculum that we took to 5 different elementary schools and were able to connect with the campers and give them our curriculum. And this was a really awesome opportunity for me because not only was it my first professional experience, but I also got to share what I'm passionate about with the younger generation and see the work that we were doing and how it impacted them. And I also got to give back to the community because I was born and raised in Baltimore, and so it was close to home. And then last summer, I worked with the Federal Reserve Board of Governors as a sustainability intern. And during my time at the board, I created a partnership with Capital Bike Share and the board to give board employees free memberships. So with the goal of decreasing overall carbon emissions for the board. And I also was a part of the solar panel installation for the 3 board buildings. And so while both of those experiences were super helpful for me in both my professional and my academic goals, I was kind of missing understanding of state environmental policy at the time. which led me to my interest in the Mel Noland Fellowship Program. And so some of the assignments that I did during my time with Maryland Forestry Foundation were writing 2 shorter articles about environmental topics that I'm passionate in. And so I am definitely more legal focused, but I was really interested to see environmental policy and forestry programming that the state of Maryland was doing, because that wasn't something that was really touched on during my time at University of Maryland. And so both of my articles were sort of related to that. And so the first article that I wrote was about the Inflation Reduction Act and how the Inflation Reduction Act impacted urban and community forestry across the nation. And so one of the provisions was a large budget to go to the U.S. Forest Service in order to assist helping communities prevent wildfires and give grants to non-federal forest landowners. And I thought that this was a really cool aspect of the Inflation Reduction Act that wasn't really advertised. I feel like when most people think of the Inflation Reduction Act, they just think of the steps that the government was taking to reduce inflation, but there are so many other aspects of the act that had an impact on forestry and environmental justice, such as the Justice 40 initiative. And so I really wanted to highlight that, and I thought it would be interesting for other people to have that understanding. And then the second article I wrote was about a recent case that was heard in the Supreme Court called Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo. And this case is about a doctrine called the Chevron Doctrine, which basically states that if Congress is silent or ambiguous about an issue, if a rule is challenged in court, court should generally side with an agency's interpretation of the statute. And so if this doctrine were to be eliminated, it would have a incredibly negative impact on environmental policymaking, because when agencies like the U.S. Forest Service or the Environmental Protection Agency are creating progressive rules, a lot of times they pass these progressive rules knowing that if they were to be challenged in court, a lot of times the courts would fall back and agree with the agency's interpretation because of the Chevron doctrine. And so obviously, if the doctrine doesn't exist anymore, it would be a lot harder for agencies to pass strong, long-lasting environmental regulations that would last with the constantly changing political landscape, especially with the upcoming changing of administrations. And this doctrine, if this doctrine weren't to exist anymore, it would obviously have a crazy negative impact. And so I really wanted to highlight how important it was, because the decision should be coming out, I think within the next month. So that would be crazy. But so while both of these articles were helpful for me to understand how federal programs are supporting forestry efforts, I still really wasn't getting the understanding that I wanted at the state level. And so I had the opportunity to write a research paper about Maryland's emerging forestry policy and some confusions amongst those programs. And so while I was writing this paper, I had the opportunity to research the history of forest policy in Maryland. And I found this super interesting because I would consider Maryland one of the most progressive states in forestry policy. We've had policy enacted since the early 1900s, which was really surprising to me and interesting to learn about. And then I also had the opportunity to familiarize myself with the policymaking process in the state of Maryland. A lot of my studies, like I mentioned before, were focused on the federal level. And so it was really helpful for me, especially with my future in law, to understand kind of the differences that there are between policymaking at the federal level and the state level. And so in addition to that, like Hannah mentioned, I also had the opportunity to attend one of the forestry board meetings in November. And this was a really awesome opportunity for us, not only to meet representatives from the forestry boards across the state, but also to hear about the different programs that were happening. It was really cool to hear about the 5 million trees update, because it had been a big topic in one of my classes about how successful it's been so far. And so to hear live updates and technological aspects of the program that are accessible to the public, that was a really awesome presentation to hear. And we also had the opportunity to meet the other fellows that are involved. So I really enjoyed doing that. And yeah, overall, I am so grateful for my time in the Mel Noland Fellowship Program. And to any student who is considering applying, I would highly recommend it.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Lauren. And as you guys talk, I'm going to generate some questions as well. I already have 3 already. So hopefully when we get to the end, if we don't have too many from the audience, mine will be sufficient enough. So thank you for providing all your experiences and your opinions. It's going to help me generate some good questions to kind of push the narrative and push the conversation forward. But next we have Anna Cullen. Anna is a student at Allegheny College of Maryland. She graduated with her first associates in biology this past May. She will be graduating with her second in forest technology this coming December. So after graduating from Allegheny College, she plans to start attending West Virginia University to pursue a bachelor's degree in forest management. Following graduation, she hopes to pursue a career in traditional forestry, implementing good silviculture practices in today's forest. So welcome, Anna, and you can go ahead.
Hello, so like Marie said, I'm Anna, and I was introduced to the Mel Fellowship from a past professor, Steve Resch, who in the past put on the Natural Careers Camp and was like a big part of it. So he introduced me to the application and said you should apply, and I did. And luckily I was able to get it, which was a really big achievement. And then I was able to attend the camp last summer as a counselor, where I was in charge of a group of students and went through the camp processes with them, and it was a really rewarding experience to share not only my own knowledge with the students, but also see them grow throughout the week and determine if they really want a career in natural resources in their future or not. So that was a really fun experience. And then once the fellowship started, my first task that I endured was making a pamphlet invitation for the new camp that's going to be starting. I believe is starting this summer down at the University of Maryland campus, which is for urban forestry. And this is supposed to be in the future a 2-week-long camp focused around urban forestry as opposed to natural resources. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for students to learn kind of the difference, since there is 2 main aspects of forestry, and to learn what urban foresters do, especially downstate where there's a lot of careers in urban forestry. So after I made that pamphlet, I'm not exactly sure where it went, but I'm sure it's somewhere, and that camp is going to be great this summer for their trial period. Hopefully takes off within the next few years. And then just like Lauren had said, I wrote 2 blog posts focused around what my interests are around natural resource careers. And my first post was about silviculture and how it is really important for our forests, and kind of how it works and why it's important and what it implements in our forests to make them better and regenerate well. And then my other post was about fire history and policy around fire. So how it's been used in the past and how we have kind of stopped fires from happening, and how that's affecting our forests today to be overgrown and fully stocked, which is not good, which promotes disease, and how fire is kind of coming back into the world, and how people are trying to use it more and going on prescribed burns and doing that stuff. And fortunately, through my schooling, I was actually able to go on 2 understory burns just this past burn season. And I was on, I think it was a 5-acre understory burn and then a 23-acre understory burn, both with very different objectives, but it kind of proved that fire can be used to implement anything. The first one was to promote a flower that needs fire to grow. and it was to see if this flower would come back with fire. And then it was also like a little trial to like make sure that invasive species such as Ailanthus altissima, which is tree of heaven, would come back with this fire. And then the other one was basically to remove like greenbrier and stuff in the understory to kind of clear it up and promote like deer habitat better, as it was a property for deer hunting. And then other things, I unfortunately wasn't able to attend many seminars or things through this program since I am from Allegheny County, and it was a far drive to get down to downstate to attend anything. But I was able to watch some like videos of some stuff, and with close like communication with my professor, Marie Perrin Miller, who kind of runs the camp as well and is a really large, important piece of the Natural Careers Camp. I worked alongside her and I helped her with a few things, promoting it up in this area and putting stuff together. And it was all a rewarding experience. Everything that's come out of being a student at Allegheny College of Maryland and this fellowship has been great. And I'm currently in an internship, which I'm here now, at the lab up in Maryland. It's a subset of the University of Maryland, and basically I'm working on, it's kind of a strange project. It's kind of connecting forestry with biology, but it's a project around like bird stopover habitat. So I'm working alongside the Powdermill Avian Research Center to determine like what the habitat is that these birds are stopping at during migration. And how the habitat like helps them to continue migration. And this is something that I wouldn't have gotten this internship without AC and without this fellowship, kind of boosting me forward into different career sets. So it's been a great opportunity, and I really would definitely recommend it for anyone in the future to apply.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna, for sharing that. And lastly, we have Peyton Eppard. Peyton is a senior undergraduate at St. Mary's College of Maryland, majoring in environmental science. Upon graduation, he plans to continue hands-on work in the natural resources field as a federal wildlands firefighter. Peyton is committed to making outdoor spaces more accessible and engaging for people of all backgrounds, and enjoys getting others to take a moment to recognize the beauty of the natural world around them, something I'm passionate about as well. So thank you for being here, Peyton, and you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. It's been a great position here. It's allowed me to spread out into like interests that I wouldn't have otherwise really pursued, particularly wildland firefighting. I thought it was pretty interesting that not one, but two of my peers wrote blog posts about wildfires. And I just completed my basic wildfire training. So I'm now officially certified to go out. Pretty dope. I want to thank the foundation for allowing me to go out there and covering the fees associated with that. That was extremely generous. I'm also just interested, like you said, in getting people to engage with the outdoors. And that is, you can see that in my blog posts. The most recent one was about Maryland's native tropical fruit, the pawpaw, which most places in the state, you can just go out into the woods, and in the understory, you'll be able to find a pawpaw tree. And if it's mature enough, you can get a edible fruit from it in the fall time. And it's just cool that you can go out and do that. And I think people should be able to explore like that. And I want to expand people's access to just that knowledge that, you don't find out without friends in the environmental area. Another thing that I've been able to do through the foundation was I went to the World Forum on Urban Forestry. That was a pretty insane experience. I'd never been to a conference before, and this was an international conference that was in DC this year. And the thing that most caught my eye there was the presentation by American Forests on the urban tree cover. and their map that they have, which displays all that, which is also, they did a even more in-depth project in DC specifically. And I was just fascinated by that. And that allowed me to improve my suggestions for the Maryland Forestry Data Dashboard, which the Maryland DNR will be putting out very soon. And I felt like by attending that conference, I was able to give some suggestions that would make this forestry data dashboard more accessible to people. Along another line, something I've been able to do this year is just sort of build up my confidence in being sort of an outdoor guide. Something I did very recently at the end of this last semester. I'm the vice president of the Outdoor Adventure Club at St. Mary's College, and I set up a trip based around yoga to go to the National Arboretum in DC. And we spent the day, we did some guided yoga and explored the Arboretum. And it was a great opportunity to bring people from outside of the normal environmental realm into something where they can go experience the beauty of trees in this urban setting. Also throughout this, I was an intern with University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science down in Solomons. And with that, I got to do some marsh erosion surveying, and that was really cool. So I've been able to dip into sort of, you know, the science thing where it's all data with this surveying. I've been able to do interpretive stuff with teaching about outdoors in the Arboretum. And I've been able to advance my career hopes with this firefighter training. And it's been a really wonderful experience. And I like writing the blogs because it's just another opportunity to write about stuff that I hope other people will find interesting.
Awesome, Peyton. Thank you for sharing that. You know, I've been in forestry for about 4 years, and I'm not a classical trained forest as you guys are. So even with some of the things that you said have been, inspired me, to go out and get some more education and learn more and get more experiences. So I can start with a few questions to get the conversation going, and anybody can answer these questions. Just unmute yourself or just, raise your hand and let me know. So my first question is, what advice do you have for an up-and-coming student who is unsure exactly what area in ecology or forestry that they want to pursue? What are some of the things that, triggered you to like really hone in and focus on what you guys wanted to study or go out in the world and do?
I would give the advice to get experience in as many different pathways as the student could. That's kind of what helped me realize that like I wanted to pursue the more policymaking side and to speak to people who are doing things that that student potentially could see themselves doing in the future, to kind of get an understanding of what that profession or line of work might actually look like. And I feel like the most helpful thing is putting yourselves like in the shoes of someone like that and getting the actual hands-on experience to be able to figure out like, oh, like I could see myself doing this, or like this doesn't really work for me, you know?
Yeah, I want to go off of that. Definitely, like I said in my little personal blurb there, like being able to spread out and do as many things as I've been able to do has really showed me like where my passion lies. But the other side of that is like there's been a few things that I tried where I've just had to be honest with myself, where it's like I didn't really enjoy that. And allowing yourself to like recognize that you didn't enjoy something that you might have wanted to will long term, like just being able to know yourself, it will let you choose something that will ultimately you will enjoy.
Anna, do you have any words to add?
I mean, just go out and try stuff. I mean, you're not gonna know if you like it if you don't try. So that's that's kind of, I started in biology, and after taking a botany class, I was like, well, I'm just gonna give forestry a go, and I took the win. I've been at AC now for 3 years when it's usually it's a 2-year school, but I would never take that back because it's given me so many opportunities. So honestly, if you just have a feeling that you want to try something, go out and try it and do it because you might love it or you'll hate it, but worth it.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers. And I know I'm a little older than you guys. I know I look young, but I'm a little older. And I know your generation is really big on being very vocal, and has like an activist spirit, and pushing forward narratives that like challenge, some of the older systems. So in your opinion of what you've seen, do you feel like the push or the fight for forestry initiatives is being received with open ears by, big government, small government, city government, local governments?
I'm not actually sure how to answer that because in some aspects, there's a lot of people that don't like parts of forestry, such as timber harvesting and stuff like that. And it's kind of hard to get people to understand that it is a beneficial thing that actually does usually need to be done to help a forest be better. Because in a lot of cases, a lot of our forests are way, like they're so overgrown and they need to be thinned. Just for general health, which is why we have a big issue with invasive species and outbreaks with different insects that are causing harm. And so I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about like government stuff and all that, so I won't say that I do. I'm sure Lauren knows a lot more than I do, so I'll let her take that.
I was about to
But
say Anna and Lauren, you probably got to get together
yeah,
and
but
she can push.
I do know that there is a lot of like people that probably don't, just like working now in research at the Appalachian Lab, there's a lot of people that be like, about harvesting and different forestry things that I think it's just because they're not fully educated on it. I think once you do get educated on it, you'll fully be down for it, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure if I can really speak about like the science aspect of that, but at least in my opinion, on the state level, I feel like Maryland's, like I said, kind of in my little speech, Maryland is very progressive in its forestry policy and its forestry programming. I can't really say that for the federal government or any other states, but I mean, at least in my experience, like before I was a part of this fellowship program, I have obviously been in the environmental realm for quite a few years, but forestry isn't really a topic that I was super knowledgeable about. And so I feel like maybe it could be improved if people really understood the benefits of forestry and how important it was to maintain healthy forests. But that is just something that I'm not sure is really like a widespread interest. But yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Pete?
I'm in a similar boat where really out in the like sort of policy side of things, I'm not so familiar, but broad strokes, like I think it makes sense that people are sort of they have a difficult time understanding why something like cutting down a section of forest or wildfire or even, having a tree planted in front of your house, potentially dropping a branch on your car, there's things like that where there's a lot of public outreach that has to be done. And I feel like right now it's a good time because people are recognizing that having access to green spaces is incredibly important. But on a wide scale, I'm not sure what the stage of that is right now.
Okay. Awesome. You guys are really early into your career, so you have a lot of time to get into those, those spaces. But that kind of segues into my next question here. It's policy versus practice. I think you guys are a nice blend of, young people that have kind of gotten both of those things. So in your opinion, when trying to bring, the government's, money and resources down to the practice side, to where the actual money and resources need to get used. I see some of you have some experience with some nonprofits and things like that. So what do you guys think is a good methodology for bringing those two narratives together? Is there anything you've seen out there in your internships, working with nonprofits or working in the fields already?
I think that public awareness is a huge part of bringing funding in for programs like the various county forestry programs. Because like when a lot of times like the government might not prioritize something like forestry when creating a budget or new bills that are going towards agencies like the Forest Service or the EPA, but like especially like when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, there's been such a recent push in the past few years for improving urban and community forestry that like the public outreach and has like helped to make the government aware of what like how severe the issue actually was with access to green spaces in cities across the country. And so I think by getting more community engagement in these issues will also help lead to further public awareness, which makes it easier for lawmakers and people who work at agencies to become familiarized with the severity of some of the issues that are happening.
Something that stood out to me when I attended the urban forestry conference in DC was how oftentimes, like when mostly speaking about urban tree canopy cover, a lot of times there's groups that will come in trying to just plant trees without consulting the community first. And there's this disconnect where there's not this like understanding of why like the community doesn't understand why trees are beneficial in the first place. And if you don't have that building block, it's extremely difficult to get a community to care about trees and take care of them in the long term. And as somebody who was fortunate enough to grow up in a neighborhood that's full of trees, I didn't understand that that was something that needs to be contended with. Um, and that's just been fascinating to me. And it's sort of something I consider now in a lot of the projects I'm a part of.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Anna, you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think as long as people are educated about it and passionate about it, then the funds are gonna flow towards it.
I agree. And as a representative of city government, all of those answers were spot on. But I think you guys, as emerging foresters and ecologists and policymakers, are right on spot on with your thinking and actually your actions within even your early points of your career. So I thank you guys for those answers. So as well as being very boisterous and the activist generation, one thing you guys have the pleasure of is really being at the forefront of like a lot of new technologies, that are coming out, especially with AI and mapping and GIS and things like that. So if any, has there been any, emerging technology that you've seen up and coming that's going to benefit forestry's initiatives to get more people interested in ecology education and of stewarding our forests?
I can go first. The urban forestry focus with the American Forest Canopy Cover Map was super inspiring to me, as I mentioned earlier, because more than like sort of a GIS based map, it functions closer to like Google Maps, where it's very easy for like the average user who doesn't have GIS training to use. And I think that's pretty cool that we can have these custom maps that allow people to look at their specific properties and do it in a way where it doesn't take 200 clicks and scrolling to get to it. You can basically go onto a website and type in your address and it zooms into your area and it's very easy to read. And I think more so than advanced technology, like usable technology has been like something that's really I've seen improving.
Yeah, another example of a GIS tool I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, EPA released something called the EJ screen, which is a GIS tool that's accessible to anyone that you can same thing as what Peyton was talking about. You can zoom into your area and put different layers on top of it. And there is a section for climate change data. And you can see the risk that your community is in for like a wildfire risk or a flood risk, floodplains, and then sea level rise. And I think that all of those issues kind of tie into forestry. And so it's really helpful for people who might not have the ability to access other data sets, especially because I'm sure everyone's opened an Excel sheet with like thousands of rows and looked at it and it's just been like, what am I looking at? But tools like this, even states have started to create their own tools. University of Maryland has a similar tool created, and then I believe the state government also has its own. But things like this are super helpful for people to kind of see issues in their community that have been proven through data, such as like a high wildfire risk. That's clearly associated with forestry. But things like this have been super helpful to make communities more aware of issues that they might not have been informed about.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are visual learners. I myself am a visual learner, so I really like maps and I like interactive maps. So I think with more interactive maps becoming a thing, it's really going to get people to understand, be able to like actually see the world and what's happening where it's happening. And then also like people that are coding and making these maps and working to put them together and stuff, they're also kind of getting a glimpse into this different world that's not behind a computer screen because they get to see and kind of interact with what they're making, which I think opens their eyes to a different place too.
Okay, awesome. And this is going to be like a kind of a two-part question. Because right now you guys are still students and it's seemingly you guys are enjoying school and learning. But there will come a time to when you got to stop learning and go into a career. So for the future, what are each of you guys' next educational steps in where you want to go? But also with that, how has your education experience and or this internship experience kind of like really like fine-tuned some of your career goals?
I can go first. So like you said in the introduction for me, once I graduate from AC this December, I'm gonna attend West Virginia University and get my bachelor's in forest management. Once I get my bachelor's, I'm potentially gonna pursue a master's degree. I'm still uncertain of doing that, and it's kind of something I'm just gonna play by ear. But I really want to work in traditional forestry with silviculture, and I really want to do really anything that promotes not only like outdoor work, but also like the research behind like why are we harvesting in this section, what's the harvest going to be, and what's the goal behind it. Because I like to have a little bit of both implementing, and I kind of learned that through my education at AC, because we would go through and have different objectives as to why we're picking out trees. Like, are we measuring for a harvest? Like, what is the best harvest that would be done here based on landowner objectives and all of these different things? And I really enjoy that process of kind of going through and, I don't know, like making a property what it wants to be based on what people want it to be. And that's something I kind of just learned through my education that I really, really enjoy. And I hope to like pursue that. And yeah.
Something I've picked up on in the last few years at school has been I really like having this understanding of what is around me. And I am the most happy when I'm sharing that with other people and getting them to engage with what's around them. And I found that my favorite way of doing that isn't so much through like writing and reports and stuff, but more so with like hands-on conservation work and sort of interpretive things. And that's just been something I've been able to recognize recently. And that's sort of pushed me where I'm going into like Wildland Fire and other like super hands-on outdoor all the time careers. And it's just been nice to be able to figure out that's what I want to do. It's all about being outside and getting people to just look around.
For me, I honestly was really unsure about what I wanted to do following graduation. I had my degree in politics and policy, but I never saw myself really like going into law. But then it was actually at the beginning of this school year, I was working on my research paper, and then I was also taking an environmental justice class, and it really opened my eyes to see how lawyers and nonprofits have been able to make such an impact on communities that have been historically disadvantaged by whether that's industry or by zoning or even like government actions. And so that is kind of really what inspired me to go into law. And the fellowship program has helped me expand in past just the federal level into the state level, which I would see myself working in, either whether that be like for a nonprofit or for just a private practice. And yeah.
Well, I know you all have bright futures, that's for sure. Just stay focused on what you want to do and just keep getting that experience and you will get there. I have one final question and then I'm going to kick it back to Mr. Gary Allen to wrap up. So the overall narrative, which is really bringing a lot of attention onto forestry and ecology, is, you know, the fact that global warming is, you know, happening and we need to solve, you know, some problems based off of that. So in your own opinion, and your own ideas of what you've seen, what do you think is the most challenging ecological problem that we face? I'm not saying you have to solve it, but what do you think in your own opinion right now is probably one of the biggest things we have to worry about?
I recently wrote like a short creative piece about not anything specific about global warming, but more about how we've chosen to react to it. And I think it's the hardest thing to overcome is this feeling of like apathy, where it's like we can't do anything about it. So why do anything in the first place? And overcoming that feeling and recognizing that the small steps along the way and you can't solve it all on your own. It's all about getting other people to understand it. Recognizing that, I think, is important as a first step. And then just finding what makes you tick. And if you're happy doing something, that's infectious and it spreads to other people. And if they see you're passionate, makes them more passionate about finding what they want to do to help.
I'm kind of gonna go off of what Peyton said. I know regarding climate change, a lot of times some people may individually feel guilty about some of the actions that they are taking. But I think really in order to kind of get the ball rolling and really see real change is going to come from big industries such as like big oil. And a lot of times that can be really hard because technology such as like electric vehicles, solar panels, like that costs a lot of money. And a lot of times people don't see climate change as really being such like a pressing issue. And so people aren't willing to invest that kind of time and money to improve their practices or their technology in a way that would be beneficial in preventing the effects of climate change. One thing that I learned during my time at the Federal Reserve is that the Fed was the only agency in the US federal government that had a sustainability team, and that was working towards taking actions to make the Federal Reserve System as a whole more sustainable. And I found that really surprising, considering sustainability is such like an up and coming thought. and practice. And I think that a lot of the change really needs to come from the government aspect, and then kind of lobbying and rallying big companies that are having the biggest impact on carbon emissions or pollution reduction to see how their actions are not aiding climate change, but speeding up the process. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the change needs to come from the top down.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Lauren. I mean, it starts at the top. It's not that's where Peyton was talking about like the individual guilt. Like you can't feel that because no matter how much you do, if you are not working with a group and if the people at the top aren't helping you, we're not gonna change something with just a group of 10 people. We need everyone to be involved and active. And I think that's something that like slowly like our ecosystems are changing. We're seeing stuff in nature and in forestry that climate change is genuinely having an effect on. And I think from that, we're going to start seeing people kind of take more initiative, because with like snowpack being affected and different species of not only plants, but also animals being greatly affected by it, we're going to see people that are hopefully thinking, oh, we need to maybe take bigger steps and bigger strides.
Awesome. Well, I want to personally thank Hannah, who had to leave early, so we thank her. Lauren, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, Hannah, not Anna. So Hannah had to leave a little bit early. We want to thank her, Lauren, Anna, and Peyton. This is my first introduction to you guys, but I think the Mel Fellowship has, impressed me with who they found, and I think you guys have a very bright future. And like I say, I'm currently working with Baltimore City Forestry. So if I run into you or you need anything from me while there, please shoot me an email, and I would be happy to hook you up with whoever you need to, be hooked up with, because I think you guys are the future of, forestry and ecology in, the world, not just Maryland, not just, small cities, but I think you guys will be able to affect the world. And also, Gary, I want to thank you for allowing me to step in for Megan. I actually saw you, Gary, at the Foresters, it was a forestry conference for the forestry board about 2 weeks ago. We didn't get the chance to like officially meet in person, but you inspired me with everything you had to say, and really encouraged me to, especially for forestry education and what we're doing for the Baltimore Forest School. So I thank you as well, but I want to kick it back to you and see if you have anything you want to talk about. You want to plug the careers camp or anything else, but I thank you for allowing me to lead the panel. And hopefully I'll see all you guys soon, and doing great work within Maryland, Baltimore City, and the world. So thank you.
Thank you.
Maurice. I want to thank each of you and add my thanks to those of Maurice, to each of the fellows that have been a part of the Mel Fellowship Program this year. You guys may not think of yourselves that way, but those of us in the Maryland Forestry Foundation see you as role models. You're role models not only for this program, but you're role models for younger people who are today considering a future, perhaps, in natural resources. And we feel that the fellowship program and many of the other organizations that are involved and that you've involved yourselves in over the past year are simply gateway opportunities to open up what many will see as a growing sense of professionalism in the future, as they embrace specific ways in which they can not only learn more about the environment, but ultimately address some of the challenges that my generation has left you with. I must admit, out of convenience and lifestyle choices, we've made your life much more challenging than we ever really want to admit sometimes. Most of those problems have been exacerbated over the past 25 years, just in your own lifetime as you've grown up. The problems have been compounded over and over again. I want to thank you for choosing this career, moving forward, becoming involved in our program. And let me emphasize that right now, today, applications are now open for next year's Mel Fellowship Program. And so you can go to the Maryland Forestry Foundation.org website and encourage your friends, those other students that you work with and are being educated with on your current matriculation through higher education, that the fellowship program's open. And you've been involved in recruiting high school students for both of our camps, as a matter of fact, over the past few months. The NRCC program, that's the Natural Resources Careers Camp, which is over 50 years old, sponsored by the Maryland Forestry Foundation and the District Conservancy Forestry Boards, is going to be occurring in late July. Today is the very last day to apply to the Urban Forestry Careers Camp. And I'm pleased to say that, at least on information I received within the last 4 hours or so, we have 30 students involved in that program, which is in its shakedown year at the on the University of Maryland campus. I want to remind you, for those who may see this webinar a little bit later, and again, I apologize for the technical issues that delayed your participation today, that program is in its shakedown year. It's a 1 week program this year, but it will be expanded to a 2-week program in the years ahead. And we'll be turning to folks like you to help us recruit students for those programs in the years ahead. Your example, your role model of how students can get involved and choose a career in natural resource protection and environmental education, and ultimately, we hope, in urban and community forestry, I think is an inspiration not only to old guys like myself, but hopefully to some of the younger people that you are in constant contact with. Maurice, thank you very much for stepping in this week for us, and I want to thank our fellows for stepping forward and making this program a part of their service in the Mel Fellowship Program. To each and every one of you, I offer our thanks. And I'll simply close in saying, for those of you who see the program at a later date, we'll make a special broadcast of it in July in association with our coming Framing the Futures program, the monthly webinar series provided by the Foundation that describe the issues that we believe will shape the future of forestry in Maryland, on the third Thursday of each month at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much for your participation. Have a good day. Enjoy the heat cycle that we're into right now. It's a little bit overwhelming, I think, for all of us. It certainly has been for me. Thanks, guys. Take care.